The war in Iran has dealt a heavy blow to India's economy. The war has squeezed gas supplies to India, causing hundreds of factories to close and hitting restaurants and families across the nation as cooking gas runs out. The rupee's value has fallen as oil prices rise, triggering fears of inflation and widespread public anger.
Alliances have to be built not only on power equations, but also in predictability. You need predictability. And once partners begin to doubt another partner's reliability, the memory lingers, I think, beyond a single administration. I think that is what America has to ponder about. Because when you look to the future, with all that is happening now, even with, the war that we see in the Middle East, and, there will be questions about how, it all began and the way it panned out and the kind of damage and the impact, the outcomes of that conflict. India, Europe and Canada and Japan and Australia and others may still work closely with Washington, but they are now more likely to also use fallback options. And so the alliances will survive, but I think the age of innocence is over.
The major shift in India-US relations is all the more remarkable considering the ties between the two leaders during Trump's first term.
A man I am proud to call my true friend, Prime Minister Modi.
Many in India and the world were surprised when this happened.
Indian exporters bracing for impact as the U.S. confirms it will be going ahead as planned with an additional 25% tariff on goods starting tomorrow. Exports from India will face duties of up to 50%. That's amongst the highest imposed by Washington.
These rates were purportedly to punish India for its purchases of Russian oil. China, which also buys Russian oil, was not subject to these tariffs. In February 2026, the U.S. announced it would lower tariffs on India from 50% to 18%. This was before the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Trump's tariffs. But the wheels of hedging have been set in motion. India is now actively diversifying its trade partners and forging new ties with an old adversary.
But it was a sharp reminder that transactionalism has replaced sentiment, if you can put it that way. So India, will it de-risk from the United States in any sweeping sense? I don't believe that, because as I said, the underlying foundational basis of the relationship is strong, and the United States remains very central to India in terms of technology, in terms of capital, in terms of defense, and of course, higher education. It's very important for us. But India is certainly learning not to over-concentrate our economic exposure on any one country.
China and India relations were frosty after a deadly border dispute in 2020, when 20 Indian soldiers were killed in clashes. In the months after, India restricted foreign investment from China, banned Chinese apps, and imposed visa restrictions on Chinese nationals. India also stepped up its military partnership with the United States through the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, commonly known as the Quad. But India's tariff difficulties with the United States have brought about changes in its relationship with China. After a gap of over 7 years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed in China on the 31st of August, 2025. Ahead of his trip to China, Modi said it is important for India and China to work together to bring stability to the world economic order. The two countries agreed to set up mechanisms to manage border disputes, enhance trans-border river cooperation, and increase trade and investments. During the meeting, President Xi told the Indian delegation that China and India are partners, not rivals. analysts pointed out that the body language of the leaders after the official meetings said a lot.
India is certainly re-evaluating China, but it's not in a simple yes or no way. Because, as you know, since 2020, just before COVID, New Delhi had introduced a stricter screening on Chinese investment, the famous Press Note 3 that you must be aware of. And that limited Chinese access in sensitive sectors. But in recent months, what you've seen is that there has been discussion within the government of selectively easing some of these restrictions, and including on government contracts in some cases, and imports of Chinese equipment for power and coal projects, for example. And so the re-evaluation with China is quite dual track, I would say. There is security caution, it remains, but economic pragmatism is pushing India towards selective re-engagement.
We've seen influential business lobby in India advocate for closer business ties with China. And the arguments are that China has cheap technology and investable surplus that India can really benefit from. Hence, they are pushing for a more conciliatory foreign policy towards China. But is that realistic, or are bilateral relations still characterized by mistrust?
There is a definite asymmetry of power, whether it's military, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's economic. I mean, facts and realities stare us in the face, literally. And there is a trust deficit. If you look at the relationship, there is a trust deficit, and it has widened since the clashes of 2020, the summer of 2020, in high up in the Himalayas. So beyond the border, of course, there is also concern in India about the asymmetry that I referred to. China is the larger economy, by many, many leagues, it's the larger economy. It's the larger manufacturing power, and it's a far more entrenched player in global supply chains. So mistrust is not just emotional or historical. It's been there ever since I started actually dealing with China over 4 decades ago. That mistrust has been, sometimes it's dormant, sometimes it raises its head. But today it's geopolitical, it's military and economic, all together, all at once. So you can understand, this is not a simple situation. It is overlaid with many complexities.
India's exports to China have since surged, but the trade deficit continues to widen as India's imports from China continue to grow at a much faster rate than its exports. This trade imbalance continues to trouble Delhi as it weighs more economic links with China. In the meantime, Delhi, once wary of free trade agreements, has moved quickly in recent months to finalize FTAs with Britain, New Zealand, and Oman. The deal that garnered the most international attention was India's FTA with the European Union. The urgency for a deal had grown increasingly acute as both entities faced the threat of higher tariffs from President Trump and sought to reduce their dependence on the U.S.
We did it. We delivered the mother of all deals. We are creating a market of 2 billion people. And this is the tale of 2 giants, the world's 2nd and 4th largest economies, 2 giants who choose partnership in a true win-win fashion. A strong message that cooperation is the best answer to global challenges.
The real significance is that it gives India, I believe, a major rules-based economic anchor, as it were, especially with what has been happening with the United States at a time of turbulence in relations with the US, with China. So, the EU becomes a kind of a steady anchor in that scenario.
With all these changes in India's relationship with so many major partners, What do you think this portends for India's relationship with the United States for the rest of the Trump term?
Well, I think India will pursue hedging. India will not pursue estrangement. And we'll try to stabilize ties with Washington. And at the same time, we're diversifying, as I mentioned, more aggressively toward Europe, towards the Gulf, Oceania, selective economic re-engagement with China, as I mentioned, where necessary. So the message to Washington is that India values the partnership, still values it very much, but it will not remain strategically overexposed to the United States.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, the political and military issues in the Himalayas are not solved, and they're unlikely to be solved anytime soon. And until they are, China is going to be India's competitor number one. That means that India will continue to have a strong incentive to align with the United States, even if it's not with the same level of trust or mutual understanding. It's also important to note that even when there was the downturn in leader-level ties between Modi and President Trump, we saw importance of aspects of cooperation, such as defense cooperation and industrial cooperation, remain on track. So I do think India and the United States will continue to be partners, but how exactly these two leaders and the two governments will recover, from what was a very challenging few months remains to be seen.